Hey guys, it's Kevin in my review for The Fall Guy. In this film, we center on the character of Colt Seavers. He is this stuntman of sorts who has appeared in a bunch of different movies, usually alongside this highly renowned, famous action star known as Tom Ryder. And after suffering an accident, he has kind of stepped away from being a stuntman for a while, but he is pulled back in when he finds out that there is a new film that's is out there and they want him to be the stuntman, but the director happens to be his ex-girlfriend, so he begrudgingly agrees, and while he is going about doing his usual stunt work, Tom Ryder all of a sudden goes missing, and he is now involved in this very dangerous conspiracy that could potentially end in his death as well, and he has to do what he can to try to get himself out of this situation as swiftly as possible, as well as putting his work as a stuntman to good use in a way he hasn't before. So The Fall Guy, I was very excited for this film. When it was announced that Ryan Gosling was going to have another comedy coming out, especially coming off the heels of Barbie and just how much of a knockout performance he gave in that, I was just really excited to see how this one would turn out, pairing him with the use of Emily Blunt, and especially seeing their incredible chemistry in that short little sketch they did when they were presenters at the Oscars and things like that. I was really excited to see how the two of them were going to work together. I didn't know much about the source material. I've heard of the show, but I don't really have any pre-existing connection to it other than my dad's a big fan of it, and I've listened to the theme song ad nauseum because he's a really big fan. So I don't really know much else about the IP, but the marketing seemed like it was going to be a lot of fun. I was hoping this could be a really fun kickoff to the summer. I remember it was originally supposed to come out in March, and then, the strikes happened, and Dune Part 2 got delayed to March, and this had to move and ended up being the kickoff film of the summer, and I was really hoping it would be this big knockout smash hit, and well, we know financially that was not the case, but critically, how is it? It's a really fun time. I really did, for the most part, have a really fun time when it came to The Fall Guy. I think this is just the kind of just fun summer romp that you really are hoping for. The kind of just fun summer crowd pleaser that you're really just kind of hoping for. And that's for many reasons, but we are just getting to it right now, starting off with the cast here. And like I said, I think going into this movie, that was easily the thing I was most excited for, and probably the thing that I had most confidence in when it came to this film. I knew regardless that we were going to get some really great performances, and thankfully that is very much the case. When it comes to Ryan Gosling, I've said it before, the guy's a movie star. He is just proved time and time again that he is one of the most charismatic and likable guys within Hollywood, and I'm really happy that he is having this moment finally, because I feel like he was one of those actors for a while that was doing a lot of films that just people weren't really seeing, and so it's great to see him finally get that recognition as an actor, and he really does kill it here as Colt. He has that swagger, he has that charm that you're really hoping his character does have, but he also isn't quite, he isn't someone who, even though yes, he is this stuntman of sorts, he isn't always perfect. There are a lot of times he isn't doing the right thing, and so he comes across a lot more human in that way, but he also is just so much fun to watch throughout this movie. The situations he gets himself involved in, you can just tell he's having so much fun in this role. He oozes, like I said, just that star power that you're hoping for, and I think he just does a really great job here. I was a big fan of his character, and I think he really does carry this film very well. And then Emily Blunt, look, she's Emily Blunt. She's fantastic in everything, and she does a really great job here. I really enjoyed her character in this movie. Jodie herself is kind of facing a lot of pressure because she is this first-time director, and I think Blunt adds a lot of heart to the film that otherwise wouldn't really be there, and the chemistry between these two is just lights out, honestly. The two of them just work so incredibly well together. There's a scene very early on in this movie, especially, that is contingent upon them being, convincing you that they are this couple, and they just do a really great job in this film. You're really rooting for them, and I think that they really do end up being like the heart and soul of this entire movie. I really enjoyed their performances in this film. When it comes to everybody else, I think everyone does do a really good job. Aaron Taylor Johnson is kind of in top form here. Like, this is the thing with him as an actor. I feel like he comes on and gives like the most unexpected performances. Like, every time Aaron Taylor Johnson like kills a role, it's always in a film I never expect for him to be a huge standout in. Think of like Bullet Train, for example. Like, I wasn't expecting him to be one of the big standouts, and that is still very much the case with the Fall Guy, where he obviously doesn't have a ton of screen time, but every time he is on, I mean, he commands the screen, playing this incredibly douchey and just over-the-top actor that has so many like demands and conditions and things like that, but he also is just so much fun to watch, and I really enjoyed him in this film. So I really enjoyed his performance here. Hannah Waddingham is also a lot of fun here. I've seen her in quite a bit of stuff lately, but I really enjoyed her performance here. She's kind of the producer that's trying to keep everyone together while all this chaos is happening. She's the one that's trying to keep everyone focused and trying to finish this movie like as quick as possible, and I think she's a very fun character. Also like this mentor of sorts to Emily Blunt's character, and I really enjoyed her in the film. Seventy Sue, another actor that's not in this movie a ton, but the moments that she has are really good. And Winston Duke also, I think, is really good. Everyone really is giving great performance. Teresa Palmer, also very good here. I don't think there's a single actor here that isn't clearly having so much fun and just really just giving this film their all, and you really do see that throughout this film. I think this entire cast was just so much fun to watch here. Alright, but now let's get to the directing and the writing for this movie, which this was the other thing that I thought was definitely something that I was really excited for, and that, of course, is that, is the directing here from David Leitch, who I think is really proving himself to be, like, one of the top guys when it comes to action films, and that is very much the case here. I really like the way he ended up directing this movie. In fact, it might just be, I think, his strongest directorial effort yet, because there is a level of passion that he puts into this film that he just hasn't in his other movies. He's done a good job of, capturing this kinetic style and having this very, hyper active sort of feel, but he hasn't really crafted a style of his own, and I feel like here you really do get the sense of what he's trying to do, kind of having this whole ode to stunt people and kind of showcasing the work that they are given, how underlooked it's really been, and you can kind of see how much this means to him since he used to be a stuntman himself, and I think he does a really good job with that. But his knack for comedy is something I've always been impressed by as a director, and that continues to be the case here. I think he does a really good job with that, but then also knowing when to, go really over the top. I think what he does well here, as opposed to his previous film in Bullet Train, is he also knew when to pull it back. There are moments when this film does get wild and crazy, but it never feels like it is too much. It feels like Leitch knew how to be a bit more restrained in this movie. I do still think he hasn't quite figured out how to craft a style of his own, but I do think that you can see how much effort and passion he is putting into this film, and so I really do think he is improving as a director. I've always enjoyed him, but I've always felt like he is not quite at the level that he needs to be, but I think this film proves that he is only going to get better as he continues to go on in his career, and I think, like I said, as a result, I think this ends up being his strongest directorial effort yet. The screenplay in this movie also, I really did enjoy a lot here. I think there's a lot of things it does do really well. The central premise alone, I think, is a really interesting one. Having this stuntman and him working on this movie and then this mystery of sorts that ends up unraveling, it ends up adding a lot of intrigue to the film. You really find yourself drawn to this mystery and really wanting to know what really is going down. How did this all end up coming about? But it's also because of how drawn you are to the character of Colt. The film does a really good job of zeroing you in on just kind of day in the life of him. The first 10 minutes of this movie is basically this unbroken one take scene of just seeing him go about his day, and I thought it was one of the best parts of the entire movie because it really got us to understand his character, his passion for being a stuntman, but also how he is constantly overlooked, how he isn't really given that much credit, but he continues to work on the job. It really shows you the effort that is put into being a stunt performer. And I think the film does a really good job with that, but also really drawing you into seeing how he wants to be recognized. He wants to be something where he has the capability to do it, but he is constantly outshined by that of Tom Ryder. And I think the way the film sets up that tension is really good, because you can totally understand why people are starting to see him like as someone who was responsible for what happened. But you also understand that despite the fact that, yes, he has, he has a lot of skills as a stunt performer, he also is not someone who is well equipped to be in this serious situation, and seeing him kind of try to navigate it are some of the best scenes within the entire film. The way everything ends up going down and kind of seeing him have to step up in that way, I thought was just really well done. I thought he had a really strong character arc in this movie. I really enjoyed his character throughout the film. And then when it comes to Jodie, I think her character is also really interesting. Her trying to kind of make her rounds as this director, but also having this really interesting commentary on a director trying to, craft their own film and, not have others constantly getting in the way. There's this really great subplot of sorts involving Jodie and this clashing she's having with the producer of the film, Gail, who kind of is like a mentor to her, but also is someone who is a little bit more condescending in that way. She's had a lot of experience, and her vision of Metal Storm is very different from Jodie's vision of Metal Storm, and I found that to be one of the most interesting moments of the film. I've seen this film twice now, and especially on a rewatch, that was a part that I really felt drawn to, is their overall sort of plot line, and just seeing if Jodie's going to be able to make sure that the film that ends up, the film that ends up being promoted and the film that ends up being seen to audiences is her full vision. I feel like that was a really strong social commentary. We've seen this a lot lately, where you have directors that have a certain way they want their, they have a certain vision for what they want their film to be, and there are others that are just studio heads and producers that are constantly getting in the way of that, and we kind of see Jodie go through that in this film, and I found that to be just a really interesting aspect overall. So the film actually provided a lot more thoughtful and interesting ideas when it came to the industry than I really did expect them to, and that's something I really did enjoy about this movie. But I also have to mention, this film is just very funny, and I was laughing quite hysterically throughout this film. There are multiple moments that just had me in absolute stitches, and a lot of that is due to the fact that you have these two characters that just really want nothing to do with each other. The two of them are very much broken up at this point, and there's this really great scene in the beginning where the two of them are just constantly trading insults and trying to one-up each other, and it's one of the funniest scenes in the entire film. It just sets the perfect tone of what this film is going to go for, and I think that the comedy for the most part really just ended up working very well for me. I found myself laughing frequently throughout this film, whether it's seeing all the ridiculous situations that Colt ends up getting himself involved in, or just the banter between characters. I thought the humor overall really did end up landing, and I found myself laughing pretty consistently throughout this film, so I think that's an aspect that just works out really well. So yeah, I think the screenplay really does succeed on that front. I think there's a lot of things that it does do really well. When you eventually get to the reveal of how everything happened, yes, maybe it was kind of predictable, but the way it all ends up going down, I thought was just really exciting to watch and really just kicked the film into high gear in a way that was even more exciting than what it already was, and I thought it made for just a really fun conclusion. So yeah, I really enjoyed the screenplay a lot, knowing when to insert comedy, knowing when to insert that level of heart. I think he did a really good job when it came to that. And again, the multiple, social commentary on stunt people and just the movie industry in general, I think the movie does a really good job of diving into all of that, but also having a lot of satire here. The movie that Jodie is making is like a blatant parody of like Dune, or at least that's what it reminded me of. I know people have said Rebel Moon, but like it was reminding me of Dune. The score that was playing consistently especially was reminding me of that, and also but it also is like this like big budget like sci-fi film film that seems so artificial, and I think that makes, every time we cut back to it, it made for some of the funniest moments in the entire movie, because you can just tell the film is really leaning heavily into just trying to, make fun of that as much as possible, and I thought they did a really good job with that. So yeah, again, I just really enjoyed the screenplay a lot here. The cinematography also is very well done. I thought there were just a lot of really well put together shots in this movie, especially the scenes where they are working on the movie. Those are some of the best scenes cinematography wise, and I really did enjoy cinematography here. But the action sequences also, I think, really do end up delivering, and this has basically been the main consistency with Leitch, as with films that Leitch directs, is that his action always ends up ripping, and that is very much the case here. The action in this film very much does rip. I really did enjoy the action sequences a lot here, and particularly the way they ended up framing them, I thought was actually, they got pretty creative with it. There was one scene here involving this this drug of sorts that Colt ends up taking, and so because of that, the way that whole thing was framed, him kind of, being in this, state the entire scene and having to fight someone, I thought made for probably the most visually stunning scene of the entire film. But there's some other really good action sequences. There's one on like a conveyor belt that I really enjoyed. There's the whole thing that you've seen in the trailer with him, leaping onto that plane. I mean, the action really is very entertaining here. Whether it's, the actual action that's happening or the stuff they're doing in the movie, I think they did a good job when it came to that, and there were some really strong sequences in this film that I thought worked out really well. The score by Dominic Lewis I also enjoyed a lot here, but also the soundtrack is so much fun. There's this recurring motif of I Was Made for Lovin' You by Kiss. It's kind of like Colt's anthem throughout the film, and I thought it worked really well, actually. I thought the way that coalesced throughout the entire movie and was implemented ended up really working out in this film, and I thought it just really, it gave him this theme that I thought, really just ended up working out well, so I really did enjoy that in the film. And then the editing, I will admit, yes, this movie can be a little bit overlong sometimes. I do think the third act goes on just a couple minutes too long. Like, there's a point where I feel like, okay, I'm fine with it ending there, and then it just kind of keeps going. And that's really the only, like, the rest of the film I thought honestly was pretty well paced. I didn't find myself bored with anything that was going on. I kind of found myself just locked in the entire time, and I thought the film, for the most part, was really well paced here. That being said, the movie is not perfect. There definitely are some things that do end up bringing this down. One of them is that you've heard me talk a lot about Colt's overall arc and Jodie's arc and the mystery that's going on and how interesting all of that is, but you really haven't heard me talk much about the romance, and that is because, unfortunately, that is the weakest aspect of this film, and I understand that that's supposed to be, like, kind of the centerpiece of it all, and it should be a much larger issue than it is, but it really is because that's not really as much of a focus as I think the marketing or the movie really makes it. And a lot of that is just because, like, we don't really get to see a lot of moments between these two characters. We see them in this states where they've broken up and we can see a lot of regrets, but it never feels like we're really given that window into what their relationship was, what got them to this point. There's some moments here and there, especially when it comes to seeing them together when they were together. We don't really get to see any of that. There's like some brief glimpses here or there, but because of that, I just felt very disconnected from their relationship. I never really felt like I had a handle on, what really drove them to this point, and also kind of what drives them to each other. I think the third act of this movie, they do a better job with that, and that's something I did really enjoy. But I don't think they did the greatest job in really fleshing out that romance. It definitely felt a little bit sidelined, especially once the mystery ends up kicking in. The movie does do a good job of getting you to understand where they are at this point in their lives and how they're, and how they're able to kind of, find that connection again. And you do you buy into it because you like both of these characters and you want to see them get together. I just never really felt like I knew their relationship and understood what they had really been through. So I just felt, like I said, just a little bit cold towards it. I always liked the scenes that the two of them had together, but it just felt like they could have done a better job in really just giving us a better idea of what their relationship really was like. And then really my only other flaw with this film involves some of the other characters here. Stephanie Sue in particular I found to be very underused in this film. She has this one really great scene with Colt that I thought was honestly one of the standout scenes in the entire film, and then she kind of goes away. And they do give a reasoning for why she hasn't been in the rest of the movie that I did think was pretty clever, admittedly, but it didn't make up for the fact that I still felt like they could have utilized her more. I thought that she was just such a highlight in this movie. I wanted a lot more from her character. Winston Duke also, I think we just need to see a little bit more from. He is fun when he's in the movie. He plays Colt's best friend, and I enjoy the interactions that these two have, but I just need a little bit more of that. But really, other than that, I mean, The Fall Guy was basically everything that I was hoping for. It does such a great job of taking this very typical action film and putting this really fun spin on it, diving deeper, but also diving deeper into the movie industry and having some really interesting social commentary there, as well as having a really interesting mystery on its own. It's absolutely carried by its main two actors here, who both just really put their fullest into it and do such a great job. It can be a little overlawn sometimes, and I do think there are some aspects the film could have touched upon a bit more, but I think for what this is, it really did end up delivering. If you really just want a fun summer crowd pleaser, I think you could do a lot worse than The Fall Guy, and I think this honestly is a really fun way to start things out. And so while yes, there are definitely things that bothered me, I can't really say it was too much of a hindrance just because of how much fun I really did have with this one. It's both this great ode to stunt performers as well as the filmmaking industry, but it also is just such a relentlessly entertaining and frequently very funny, summer romp that I think is everything you really could want in a film like this. Overall, I mean, I had such a blast when it comes to The Fall Guy, and I am going to give it a B+. But over, guys, some review of The Fall Guy. Let me know if you guys saw this movie. All left your thoughts, and I will see you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.